La Sarbatoarea Mierii de la Blaj, din inima Transilvaniei, am avut plăcerea să-l întâlnim pe domnul Walter Haefeker, președintele Asociatiei Europene a Apicultorilor Profesionisti și, în același timp, membru în bordul de conducere al Asociatiei Germane a Apicultorilor Profesionisti. Cu domnia sa am avut o serie de discuții extrem de interesante. Vă invităm astăzi să urmăriți dialogul pe care l-am avut cu domnia sa despre digitalizarea agriculturii și impactul acesteia asupra apiculturii.
My name is Walter Haefeker. I'm the president of the European Professional Beekeepers Association. I'm also on the board of the German Professional Beekeepers Association, and both organizations are all volunteer organizations. So we're volunteering our time to improve the situation for beekeepers and improve the situation for bees all over Europe. I live in Bavaria. I have an organic beekeeping operation in Bavaria. Bavaria is on the northern side of the Alps. It's part of Germany. And in Bavaria, we have a very interesting development, because in Bavaria we had a referendum where people voted on a proposal to save the bees and save biodiversity. And so a few weeks ago, the referendum completed, and it was the most successful public referendum in Bavarian history. So people, of course, care a lot about the bees. They care about biodiversity in the environment, and they want politics to change. They want to make sure there's higher priority on bees and biodiversity than what politicians have done in the past. And so this has resulted in the Bavarian government trying to respond to this strong signal from the general public. And this means they're trying to make changes in agricultural policy. So if you want to save the bees, of course, you need to affect the policies that affect the largest amount of land. Of course, people can do things in their private garden. Of course, you can do things in nature reserves, but the largest surface area that is influenced by humans is the agricultural land. This is also an important signal for Europe, because this happened to be in Bavaria, but now other parts of Germany want to have a referendum too, and other parts of Europe want to have a referendum too, because the public is not satisfied with the way agricultural policy strikes the balance between producing food and feed and energy and protecting biodiversity. This signal from the population comes at a very interesting time, because right now in Brussels the finishing touches are being put on CAP reform. CAP is the Common Agricultural Policy, and the CAP is actually the largest part of the European budget. The most money the EU is spending on agriculture. And we know from working in Brussels, everybody knows in Brussels, that the Commission is very concerned about public support for spending this much money on agriculture that the public thinks is not really good for society, not really good for the environment. So basically having the voters in Germany, in Bavaria, sending such a strong signal that they want change is also a strong signal that if they don't make substantial changes, people will revolt against spending so much money on the wrong agriculture. So, you know, it seems to be just a regional thing in Bavaria, but it has a larger meaning. The signal also comes at a good time for a totally different reason, because agriculture is going to go through significant changes for a different reason. It's going to go through significant changes because of digitalization, digital agriculture. Digital agriculture could be something just for the big guys and only available from large corporations, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's still a lot of new technology that is currently mostly at the university level. The universities are doing research with public money. So there is a good chance if we take the right next steps, if we play our cards right, that this is actually technology that is open source, is available from big and small sources, from innovative companies. And so what we're working on is to make sure this happens as quickly as possible so that we do less damage to nature, but it also happens in a way that doesn't create dependence of our farmers on just a few big corporations, and happens in a way where smaller innovative companies can work with the farmers to provide new solutions. Digitalization is a big subject. We also have digitalization in beekeeping with digital hive scales sending data, hive management software, which was here. So digitalization is in farming is farm management system, how you plan to use your land. But one part of digitalization is actually digital plant protection. And you know, the one big conflict between industrial farming and beekeeping is plant protection, the use of pesticides. And the old way of using pesticides, the current way of using pesticides, is not very intelligent. It's actually, you know, somewhere on the field is a problem, but you cannot know exactly where it is. So you're spraying the whole field, and while you're at it with the wind, you're also spraying other areas. So it is a really primitive way of doing this. Now, with digitalization, we can actually use camera systems, we can use artificial intelligence that is interpreting the pictures, and with image recognition, we can localize the problem and then take our measure. It can be a micro application of a pesticide, but it can also do something just mechanical on a very limited surface area, and that way we have a lot less side effects. So actually we're getting back to where we started. So before all agricultural machinery, you know, people were working in the fields. And what did they have? They had 2 cameras, a neural network, and an actor, you know, maybe a hand tool, you know. So with people working in the fields, we could actually have very complicated combination of plants. With people working on the field, it didn't matter whether the fields are big or small, you know. Only when we decided to go to mechanical farming, we decided to change the way we grow crops to make sure it's good for the machines. The machines can handle it. And the machine can only handle a monoculture, and the machine, the expensive machine, needs to work on a big field very fast. So we're spraying chemicals to make the crop very homogeneous, even spray chemicals before harvest so that everything is ripe at the same time. But we're doing all of these things because the machines are big and strong and fast, but they're extremely dumb. Okay? So digitalization gives us a chance to build smart machines, And with the smart machines, we don't have to adapt the landscape to the machines. The machines are smart enough to adapt to the landscape. And this transition will make it a lot easier to work in a bee-friendly way. It make it a lot easier to protect biodiversity. And so people want a change, and a change is actually possible. So the timing is really good. Maybe if you ask, if people always wanted less chemicals in agriculture, but 20 years ago, people could say the only alternative is organic farming, right? And then organic farming actually is doing a lot of things mechanically or with other methods. But with digital agriculture, organic farming will get a lot easier. It's going to be a lot easier to work without pesticides. So actually in Germany, this year again is the second farming technology show for organic farmers. And the first one was already a huge success. So we're seeing a lot of changes in agriculture that we hope will also benefit our bees, and this is one of the reasons we're involved and are trying to facilitate this change. Another area which was also part of the conference program is the whole question of hive registration and hive tracking. So because there are basically two main reasons why the authorities want registration of hives. One is for veterinary purposes. If there is an outbreak of a disease, they need to be able to contact the beekeepers and take action. The other part is because of EU funding for the beekeeping sector. There's not a lot of money coming from the EU, but whatever money is coming, the EU wants to distribute fairly across member states, and they've decided fair is by number of hives. So each country has to report to the EU the number of hives so that the money can be allocated, and in order to do that, countries do the hive registration. So when you talk to veterinarians about what is your experience with mandatory hive registration, you can ask them the question, okay, last time you actually had an outbreak of a disease, how good were the data that you had on the beekeepers? And no matter where you go, it's always the same answer. Yeah, we thought we had everybody registered, but when there was an event, 30% were not in the system. And the reason is there are strong disincentives against registering your hives. So if the data also go to the tax authorities or to some kind of an insurance scheme or whatever, then you're not going to have accurate data, or you have to have an extremely draconian system that will actually drive a lot of beekeepers, especially hobby beekeepers, who will say, hey, this is too much hassle. On the other hand, as you can see, there's not just digitalization in agriculture, there's also digitalization in beekeeping. All over the world, people are offering hive tracking systems, hive management systems to beekeepers. like small apps for your smartphone. If you're a hobby beekeeper with 3 hives, you can, keep track of what you're doing, your varroa treatments, your honey harvest, things like that. But especially if you have a large beekeeping operation, you can only efficiently operate if you have a system like that. And so beekeepers are increasingly keeping data about their hives all the time, not just once a year. And these data are actually much better than the data that the authorities have, because for the beekeeper, if you want to work with your hive tracking system, it doesn't really make sense to lie to yourself. If you put bad data in your system, then it's not going to be useful for you, right? So one thing that we're working on is to create conditions where beekeepers want to use these systems for themselves, and there's some way to also make them useful for the authorities without destroying the incentive structure. So one way to create the right conditions for doing that is to standardize bee-related data, so that even if people use different systems, if you want to share data or exchange data, you have a standardized format. So we have at the Apimondia, the World Beekeeping level, now a working group on standardization of bee-related data. This is a group that I initiated. We have a standardization effort called BXML about the data format for that. At the European level, we have the European Bee Partnership together with EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, where we're pushing this forward. And so we're working towards a scenario where beekeepers can do their hive tracking, and where aggregate information for the authorities about overall hive movements, overall bee health, are there regions with where people recording a lot of bee losses, where this can be done in a way using encryption, proper data protection, where both sides benefit.